I've had this idea pinging around in my head for ages now, and I need to get it out. So I decided to make a video about it. I'm going to try to be as succinct as I can, and I hope that it's at least somewhat interesting and thought-provoking. For you, I'm not going to pretend I'm the first person to ever come up with this idea. I'm sure I'm not. I haven't bothered to Google it, but I'm sure other people have already considered this. But it's something that's been preoccupying me. So here goes. Um, First, this is a deep thought in three parts. I'm calling it deep. You might not think it is, but it's in three parts. And the first part is a question. And that question is, I'd like to know what the universe looks like. What does the universe look like? You've probably seen some animations on science documentaries where they've tried to put together everything we know and all the astronomical data and images that we've been able to capture and put together an animated construct of what we think the universe looks like, or at least what we can see of the known universe. And it usually looks like sort of a cloud of little tiny pinpricks of light, which represent like mega clusters of superclusters of galaxies, each one. But when you're dealing with something of such vast scale, trying to even conceptualize what it looks like is really quite challenging. But I want to know, what does the universe look like? Imagine if you could shrink the whole universe down to the size where it could fit on your kitchen table. And you could get up real close to it and look around and get a really good look at it. That's what I want. I want to be able to see what the universe looks like. But let's say I'm being really greedy, and I don't want to just see a snapshot of the universe. Because anytime you represent a space, whether it's a model, a three-dimensional model, or a two-dimensional map, you're capturing a snapshot of that space in a particular instant, in a single moment. What did it look like in that moment? Over time, it might be expanding and shrinking and doing all sorts of things, but we're only looking at a single moment if we use a map or a model. What I want to know is, I want to see everything. I want to see the entirety of the universe, the whole of creation, everything that has ever existed, everything that ever will exist, not just everything that exists right now. I want to see it all. Strike that down onto your kitchen table. What does it look like? What does an object look like when you're talking about not just a single moment, but you add in that fourth dimension of time? What does an object look like when it's the entirety of that object, from the moment it began its existence to the end? What does that look like? What would it look like? Hold that thought. That's part one. Part two. There's a music video from the 80s called Big Time. It's a Peter Gabriel video, largely forgotten piece of pop culture. But one thing that it is remembered for is that it was the first time most people saw a new kind of animation called Stratacut animation. It's hard to describe. It's a form of stop-motion animation using clay. But before you start thinking it's Wallace and Gromit, Nightmare Before Christmas kind of stop-motion claymation, it's quite different. I've got a picture here I'll show you. This is an example of a Stratacut animation. Some people call this time slice animation. And what happens is the camera aims at the object from this angle, and so you can see that there's an image of an eye there. Now normally the fleshy clay around the outside of the eye would go all the way back, but they've removed it so that you can see what it looks like inside. So the camera takes a picture of that eye. You use a knife to slice it down, do your time slice. Then the camera takes another picture, and the next image it takes will be slightly different from the first one, so that when you play them all back as a film, you get a moving image, in this case of a blinking eye. But the image of the blinking eye only looks like an eye if you're looking at a single moment of it, a single instant, a single slice. The whole thing, all together, that object, doesn't look like an eye. It looks like a burrito or some sort of sausage. And inside that, you've got all these ribbons of different colored clay that have been placed in there in very precise ways, in precise order and thickness and location, so that when you slice those time slices of your Stratacut animation, you'll get a picture that's coherent and looks like what you intend for it to look like. It's very clever, very complicated piece of animation. Just one more image very quickly. This one is of a baby. And I use this one as well because the animated version of this film shows the baby kind of smiling and laughing and wriggling. But this other image shows you from the side, as they're slicing through it, what does the whole object look like from the outside? Well, it looks like a big old misshapen lump of colored clay. Again, it's just sort of demonstrating that there is a difference between what an object looks like in a single moment of its existence and over the whole of its existence. So that Stratacut eyeball animation, there was a physical object that looked like a burrito, and that was the whole object. The film made of it, you would say, well, it looked like an eye, but that's only because you were seeing individual instant moments of that overall object, which actually didn't look anything like an eye. So that's the object. The whole thing is the object in 4 dimensions, sort of. So you've got the 3 dimensions that we all see around us, but that 4th dimension of time, it's an illustration of that concept in the real world, and that's why it really fascinates me and intrigues me. Keep that thought in mind. Part 3. Let's take these 2 ideas and stick them together and throw another question in. So we've got our universe shrunk down to the kitchen table. We want to see the whole thing. We want to see the entirety, everything that has ever existed, everything that will ever exist. We want to see it all, the whole of the universe. What does it look like? Well, consider our Stratacut animation, our time slice animation. There's a difference between what something looks like in an individual moment versus what it looks like over a span of time. Think about you. What do you, as an individual person, look like in the 4th dimension? So not just what you look like within any one moment, like this, but what you look like over a span of time. Imagine that you got up out of your chair, you walked across the room, and it took you about 5 seconds to do so. And I asked the question, what do you look like over that 5-second span of time? I want to see the whole thing. What does it look like? Well, it would look like a human silhouette. It would be as wide as you are, but it would be longer than you are because you would have moved across space during that time, and you'd be a longer object than you are within any one individual moment of it. The whole you over that 5-second period of time would be a room-length, organic, thinking, breathing, living organism. Okay? So, within the context of the universe, you haven't just moved across a room. You've also been on an Earth that is rotating. So even if you sit still for 24 hours, you're going to travel all the way around the circumference of the Earth. More than that, the Earth is also moving around the sun. So you're making little movements like this through space, and you're going around the sun at the same time. So you're actually covering quite a lot of distance, even if you stand perfectly still the whole time. But it's more than that. The solar system moves through the galaxy rather quickly. The galaxy, our galaxy, moves through the supercluster of galaxies that we're part of. That supercluster moves through the universe. Well, put all that together, you're covering a lot of distance over the course of your lifespan. I'm not a mathematician, I can't figure that out. I went and looked it up. I found somebody, some game fool on the internet who tried to figure it out. He'd done his best. It's quite tricky because you got to pick some arbitrary references if you're going to try to figure out how fast the galaxy is moving through the universe. But he did his best, and what he came up with is just a rough idea to give you a sense of the scale of what we're talking about. So let's say you're born and you live your whole life in your hometown. You never leave your hometown ever. Even so, you will have moved through the universe a distance of roughly 824 billion miles. 824 billion miles across the universe over an average lifespan. So think about you as a 4-dimensional being. What does the whole of you over that 70-year lifespan look like? Well, it's like a ribbon. A ribbon moving through the universe, a ribbon that's human width, but about 1 trillion miles long. Take it even further. It's not just one ribbon. There are, what, 6 billion people on this planet? 7? And it's not just the people who are alive right now. If you're talking about the fourth dimension, you're talking about everyone who has ever lived, everyone who ever will live. All of those people traveling more or less effectively, relatively, together. So you've got ribbons, living ribbons, or ropes, or filaments, or whatever you want to call it, moving through space, and not just in like a fiber optic cable with all these sort of parallel individual filaments running through it, but all weaving in amongst each other, in and out, and back and forth. And you have this sort of cable of interweaving ribbons or filaments of living, thinking life, zipping across the universe. So, when you're a kid and you had a class photo taken, and you think, well, that's what I look like, keep in mind, you are actually a much bigger organism than any one moment of you, any one instant of you. You are vast. We are all vast. And we're all sort of woven together on this. You know, the sad truth is that this rope of humanity that's spanning 1 trillion miles of universal space is full of individual filaments trying to kill each other and bickering and hating one another. You know, that poor rope. So, my trillion-mile friend, that's my deep thought. I'm very grateful that you bore with me for 12 bloody minutes. And if you did, many thanks. I hope you enjoyed it.